Thanks, listeners, for joining us for today's Elko Live here on KELK. We have a special broadcast today featuring candidates who are seeking Elko County Commission seat in District 1. They are vying to replace Wilde Brough, who is retiring. And so it's with great pleasure and that I get to introduce today the candidates for District 1 and to talk about the things they have in common, which we could start right off with because they're both ranchers, which is nice, as is Wilde, who is retiring. And one is a Democrat, one is a Republican. And so that doesn't happen very often in Elko County. So we'll start off with a chance for Brian Gale, who is the Republican candidate, to introduce himself, followed by Jay Dalton, who is the Democrat. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. And Brian, if you don't mind, we'll jump right in with you.
Thank you, Lauren. That's fantastic. You can hear me all right? Okay. I'm Brian Gale. I'm from Ruby Valley. I grew up in Washington State and also in a rural community there. I studied manufacturing engineering at school and worked a couple of different jobs until I moved here about 18 years ago. I've always been really interested in, politics, but specifically with the Constitution. The way our founding fathers really set things up has been of great interest to me.
Thank you, Brian. That was short and sweet. And then on to you, Jay. Jay Dalton, tell us about yourself.
I'm Jay Dalton. I have lived in Elko County my entire life. I grown up in Clover Valley. My family's been there for 130 plus years, and I am running for office because I have a sense for public service and want to give back to the county that has given so much to my family and I over the years. I graduated from the University of Nevada, Reno with a degree in agricultural and applied economics. And being a rancher, and I'm sure Brian feels this too, we kind of know how to make something out of nothing.
Well, there you go.
Here.
So there are the two gentlemen, and we'll talk about a variety of issues today, but it's nice to get off on this positive foot, and I know that this will be a great discussion. We're not really doing a typical debate, and we're not timing each other. We're just letting these two talk together and side by side to give you listeners a good viewpoint. So since we started with Brian on the introductions, we'll start with you, Jay. And the first question or the first topic is your views on growth in places like Spring Creek. I know we hear a lot about that. And especially these days, there's a proposed recreation area that's causing quite a bit of discussion in the community, Jay.
And and as far as that goes, I really haven't done a whole lot of research on the recreation area itself. But I do think growth is a good thing. If for no other reason than to try and broaden the tax base in Elko County. One of the questions that kind of keeps coming up when I'm talking to people out in the country is, how do you not raise taxes and how do we collect more revenue? And I really think that by broadening the tax base in some way, shape, or form is about the only way we can do it.
That's Jay Dalton, who is a Democrat candidate for Elko County Commission District 1. And then Brian Gale, the same question for you. Your views on growth in Spring Creek, and if you have an opinion on that proposed recreation area in the Ruby Mountains.
Well, one of the concerns that I've heard over and again is that it will just turn into something like Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which actually I have a little bit of expertise on. My mother grew up in Jackson back when it was very small. As a family, we used to go there every other year for a family reunion. And so I've seen it in the last 40 or 50 years change dramatically. One of the reasons why so many people like Jackson Hole is because it's so pretty, and it's got, water right there. It's got mountains right there. It's got easy access to Yellowstone and the Teton National Park. It's beautiful. And unfortunately, for those who don't want to see Spring Creek grow, it's too beautiful. Spring Creek is beautiful, sitting there, right there at the base of the Rubies and Lamoille. And I don't know if you've seen a graph of the world's population lately, but in the last 200 years, it's really taken that hockey stick up. And, those people have got to go somewhere. So for the people who want to keep Spring Creek small, there's two sides to the story. It's good to keep things small, but if you want to say you've lived there for your entire life and you're ready to move on to your eternal reward, you might want to sell your land for quite a bit and pass it on to your grandchildren. So there's benefits. There's benefits both ways. Now, there's a lot of nice amenities when you get more people. The quicker we can grow Spring Creek, I believe, the quicker we can get a Costco.
So there you go. There are the opinions from both the candidates who are seeking county commission in District 1. So Brian, we'll start with you on this topic. Elko County government is planning several individual capital improvement projects, from a jail expansion, as we've been talking about even on this radio show. There's a justice complex, even new fire and ambulance facilities. How do you think, what's your opinion on these proposals and maybe how they should be funded?
Yeah, well, we're going to have to change. We're going to have to replace existing equipment facilities and add new. As Jay mentioned, yes, as a rancher, why, by golly, if it's still running, you still own it. And so I think it'd be really important to make sure that we're using the facilities that we have to the absolute end of the line, the as good as we can use them. And, how to pay for them, We'll make money off of taxes. We always will. Perhaps we have to start small. Old Rex Steniger has talked about how shocked he was at the bid for expansion of the Justice Center. And well, if it's gonna be something way too big, then maybe we don't need that exactly right now. Maybe we can put that off to future dates.
Thank you, Brian. Brian Gale. And on to you, Jay. Jay Dalton, same question?
I really kind of agree with Brian there. As ranchers, we're pretty good at making something out of nothing, and I think the county has to do that, but there does come a point when there's nothing left to make something out of. And we are eventually going to have to bite the bullet and spend the money for infrastructure to serve the county. And how we fund that, I guess I don't really know. I think if there's any way we can broaden the tax base, is really the way to fly, because I'd really rather not raise taxes on property taxes or what have you. But we are going to have to find the money somewhere.
Jay Dalton answering that question again about the counties eyeing several individual capital improvement projects ranging from jail expansion to the justice complex, even new fire and ambulance facilities. So Jay, we'll start with you on this next topic, and that is of election integrity. In particular, do you think Elko County should hand count ballots? And we welcome your opinion on that.
I think hand counting, machine counting, I'm fully behind whatever method that the county clerk decides. I think that's the county clerk's job, and I think the county clerk has done a good job on that so far. I don't question the integrity of elections in Elko County.
Thank you, Jay. And Brian Gale, your topic.
Yeah, similarly, I feel that things here are accurately portrayed as far as the vote goes. I believe that they're counted correctly. However, on a national scale, there is some question as to the integrity of voting. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions about, they just don't see how, for instance, Trump could have lost a few years back. And, you know, for me, I have been greatly persuaded that that perhaps there was shenanigans going on.
Keep talking while I turn that air conditioner
Okay.
off. I'm sorry.
However, as I've looked into it closer, I kind of have my doubts that all of the claims that were made have any truth to that. Well, or at least completely true. So yes, I like the way that we are counting our ballots now. However, I do recognize that there is at least an outside possibility that the system could be hijacked. Now, if we went back to a paper ballot and hand count, I recognize that would take a lot more effort on our part. It would take a lot more people willing to volunteer. But, you know, could we do it? We absolutely could. We're a small enough county. We could report our election results within a timely period. And I think it would be far less easy to hijack an election when you're counting on a precinct level and when you're sitting at a table with people you know in your neighborhood and counting, you know, the ballots. I really trust the people here in Elko County much more than I would naturally trust people from some I don't know, maybe even world corporation counting and reporting our ballots. So are the votes here in Elko County secure for right now? Yes, I believe they are. But I also believe that if we don't feel good about it, we can change. It's not going to kill us to hand count them if that's what we decide to do.
Brian Gale is one of the candidates here today, sitting alongside Jay Dalton. Both gentlemen are seeking Elko County Commission seat in District 1, the seat being vacated by retiring Wilde Brough. All three gentlemen come from a district represented by vast ranching, beautiful landscapes, and deep, deep family roots, integrity, and tradition. So, Brian, back to you. In this topic is wide open. You get to discuss the issues that you think are most important for the Elko County Commission to address. And if elected, what would you do to pursue those issues?
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you. One of the concerns or one of the issues that I'd like to contemplate is whether or not we could sell tax exemptions, long-term tax exemptions. For instance, you know, in the state of Nevada, there are a number of different entities that do not pay tax. If we could sell a private property tax exemption for ownership of property, so it might cost maybe 15 times what your tax bill would be for 1 year. If you pay that 15 times, then you never have to pay tax again on that land, no matter what happens until it sells. Now, if we could do that, then we could set up something like an endowment fund, which is how a lot of universities spend, or that's how they keep their money, is the fund will continually grow, and then you just use the interest off of it. If the land sells in the future, then it could be maybe instead of 15 times the tax rate, you could charge 7 times the tax rate, which means that every time that land sells, it comes up to the opportunity to have perpetual tax exemption. And each subsequent time that it is sold, the fund is just getting bigger and bigger. So it's growing much faster because of the time value of money. We're putting our money right now into an account that the county can handle. You know, I've looked into it a little bit, and I don't see what the legal issues are. Of course, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a rancher. But I think that would be one creative way to address our future funding issues. Everybody's always complaining about being out of money. It's one thing that government has in common everywhere. And so that's one issue that
It's like being a rancher. You're always out of money.
maybe next year, Jay. Yeah, so I think that's one issue that hasn't been approached that I think would be a vast benefit to the county, and not just to the county, but to other counties, to other cities, to states. It could be a pattern that we adopt or that we initiate here. You know, there were only about 15,000 people in Boston at the time of the Revolution. You know, the Boston Tea Party and all the things that happened at the Revolution, there's only 15,000 people. You know, so it doesn't take 500,000 people to do something significant. Elko County, what are we sitting at now? Maybe 40,000 inhabitants in Elko County. Anyways, we're bigger than Boston was. We could have an effect. We could seriously have an effect on the rest of the nation and the fiscal health of the rest of the nation.
That's an interesting concept, Brian. Thank you. So, Jay, your chance to talk about what issues you think are important for Elko County commissioners to address, and if elected, what you would do to pursue those issues.
I'll tell you what, out in District 1, where I've spent a fair portion of the summer, campaigning and visiting with people out there, the main issue that they have out in District 1, at least, is roads and how do we pay for them? How do we do the mag chloride projects, and how do we? It's basic administrative stuff, and that's really the main issue that I have found out in the county, and it's getting into the tax deal too. How do we not pay higher taxes and still have the roads fixed? And for instance, like out in Metropolis, you've been out there, Brian, it's a whole lot better than it once was. But they can't do that to every road in the county every year.
You have a lot of miles of road.
Yeah, there's
right.
a lot of miles out there. It's Pilot Valley. It's out to O'Neill Basin. It's up toward Tuscarora. And that's really kind of the main thing that people out in the country, out in District 1, are really, that's what they've talked to me most about. And how we do that, I guess I don't really know. But they seem to feel a little bit ignored out there. And getting on the commission, and this is only one district out of 5 that are on the board, but at least maybe one of us can make a little bit of noise about that.
And District 1, it is important to point out, as we talked about, these vast areas, less population, less density, but certainly some of those infrastructure needs that you just described, and roads are very expensive. Mm-hmm. A lot of people rely on those roads not just for hunting, but certainly for recreation.
Lori, that brings up another point. Jay, neither one of us are running against an incumbent.
No.
That's a little unique of a situation. And there's an issue here in the state of Nevada, and Elko County in particular, that I think we could both agree on, a bipartisan agreement, if you will. Mm-hmm. Our seat for District 1 is a county-wide election, which means if you live in downtown Elko, you can vote for District 1. Now, the needs in District 1 are a little bit different than the needs in downtown Elko. And District 1 covers, it covers from South Fork.
It's essentially everything except for Elko, Spring Creek, Lamoille, and Carlin.
Yes.
It's the whole rest of the county.
And there's a lot of roads.
It's a lot of country to cover.
So what I would like to see happen is I would like to see the race, instead of being a county-wide race, be just for the district. You know, that's an option. Legally, that's an option where District 1 votes for District 1's seat on the commission. Same thing in the school boards. It's really hard to mount an effective campaign. For a commissioner, it's hard to meet with people in Elko and Spring Creek and Carlin and Lamoille and
and
not
everywhere
to mention
else out in
Mountain
the brush.
City.
Yeah.
Places where you drive 2 hours to
Jackpot,
get to.
Wells, Wendover, Jarbidge.
Yes.
All of those places.
That's
Yeah.
right. It's hard to mount a legitimate campaign with all that. But if it were just one district, you could focus your efforts on one district. Now, in our case, it doesn't really make much of a difference. But if Jay were the incumbent and I were running against him, it would be very hard for me to combat his name recognition in just the way that people vote. Generally, it's, incumbent, I guess they're not burning the house, so I'll vote for them.
Well, yeah. What if, for instance, what if both of us were running against Wilde? That'd be pretty difficult.
Yeah. Well, I like Wildy. I don't want to put him out.
Has Wilde endorsed either of you, by the way?
He shook my hand once. That's got to count.
I went down the valley and visited with him for a little bit yesterday, but no official endorsement.
Okay,
of any
just
kind.
curious because
I talk to Wildy all the time, and I have not asked him to put his stamp of approval on me.
And I haven't either.
All right, so we'll go.
I just went and visited with him yesterday, saying, "Hey, what do you think?"
What do you think? And he probably said, "I'll get back to you," huh?
Basically, I was asking him, "What are the issues that you see coming up that you're not?"
Right.
You're not going to be there for.
Well, so this particular issue, having a district-wide rather than a county-wide election, that could be for commission, that could be for school board. It's an option in the law. It's an option that you could do it, because the way it is right now, having somebody from downtown Elko, and if you're from downtown Elko, pardon me, I still love you. It's hard to have someone from downtown Elko choose the representative for West Wendover.
Well, or why we have districts at all, right? Because
right.
so here and without change. Go ahead, Jay.
And two, when you get elected, you got to represent
everybody.
You got to represent the whole county. But what I've found visiting with people out in District 1 is that they feel kind of ignored by and large. And why have districts at all if it's going to be a county-wide election anyway?
Jay Dalton and Brian Gale are in studio today. They are both vying for Elko County Commission, District 1, the seat being vacated by retiring Wilde Brough. So we'll switch it up a little bit, and this is just a great conversation, gentlemen. And I do mean that. You're both gentlemen. It's really nice to sit in a room with you and to hear these issues discussed in this way. So if we switch it up and to the point that you were making, so what would you each say to sort of win the votes of Elko City or Spring Creek voters to kind of convince them? Because we're also trying to set you guys apart, right? We know what you have in common. I apologize. I lost track of who went first on the last one. Is that, you want to go?
No, I did.
You did? You went first?
I think
Okay.
Brian did, yeah.
All right, Jay, please. What maybe sets you apart, or what would you like to say to woo the voters of the Spring Creek Elko area?
Well, I guess I'd say let's address the elephant in the room, so to speak. I'm the only Democrat that's running for any office in Elko County, and people ask me why I'm a Democrat, and I tell them because when I first registered to vote, I wanted to be able to vote in the primary, and my father's a Republican, my mother was a Democrat, so I just chose one, and I've always been what I think is pretty much a moderate. I'm maybe left-leaning a touch on a lot of issues, but on an awful lot, I'm pretty right-leaning. I mean, I'm a Second Amendment guy. I'm a gun-toting Democrat. I'm one of those kind of Democrats that is sort of an old-school type, and I would consider myself a moderate, and I think we need more of that in politics on both sides of the aisle.
Thank you, Jay. Brian, you're also smiling and nodding. It's nice to get along, isn't it?
I kind of figured Jay would be pretty moderate as far as Democrats go. He doesn't really seem to fit the Kamala Harris mold.
Kamala. Her name's Kamala.
Yes, well.
That is her name.
Very good.
It's important to address people by their names, Brian. You know
right,
that.
Thank you. Right, I haven't actually met her. The thing I believe that would set me apart, not just from the Democrat Party, but from other Republicans, dyed-in-the-wool Republicans, is the fact that the number one thing for me is the Constitution of the United States. And the question always arises, well, this is a county issue, this is a county race. Why does the Constitution matter? And my answer is the Constitution was established to limit the federal government. Now, if we count on the federal government limiting itself, well, it's kind of like having the fox guard the hens. It's just not going to do. So every issue that I am confronted with as a commissioner, I will consider whether this expands our influence as a county or it contracts it, whether we're leaning more on our big brother to take care of things or more, whether we're taking care of things ourselves. And, you know, as a rancher living 70 miles from town, sometimes you kind of have to get a workaround. You can't always just get the part that you need or the fix that you need. And, you know, they say that thing about baling wire. Well, it's true. I think if it weren't for baling wire, anyways, it's important to be versatile and be able to approach unique answers to the common concerns that we have.
Thank you, gentlemen. In the time that we have to close out the program, I promised you each that we get to do something that's kind of fun. Each of you gets to ask one question of the other candidate. We found that listeners like that, too. It can be a little surprising. And Brian, we'll start with you.
Fantastic. So I've known Jay for quite a few years.
Don't beat me up too bad
I'm not. I think you'll enjoy this, Jay. Jay, let's say this bottle of water here is for sale, or somebody wants to sell it, and Lori and I are both interested in buying it. Would you do me a favor and auction that to us?
All right, here we go. What am I bid for it? How many dollars on it there? Here we go. I'm at 2.5 and 75. Now, what did he bid to 7.5? At 2.5 and $5. $5.
Sold.
7.5. Sold them to you, Brian.
That was awesome.
I just like to hear Jay. He's done extraordinary community service, and it's just smooth. It's better than a mariachi band.
Thank you, Brian.
Lordy.
Gale, asking a question of Jay Dalton, as both are seeking the same seat, County Commission. So, Jay, and we'll let you ask a question of Brian.
And thank you for being easy on me there, Brian. That's something that I've done for a long time. I've been the auctioneer at the fair, at the Elko County Fair now. I was counting up the years this last time, and it's been 26 or 27 years. I think this last year was number 27, maybe 26. I don't know. And it doesn't seem like it's been that long, but I've been doing that for quite a while. And I guess what I would say is my service on the fair board and Nevada Beef Council and all these other things that I've done. And the question that I've been asked my own self, which is the question I'm going to ask Brian, is why are you, what is the main focus, what's the main reason that you're running for county commission?
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate that. And, you know, one of the questions that is asked often is what qualifies you to run for county commission? or any position really. And the fundamental answer to that is because I'm legally authorized to vote. In America, that's all it takes. That's all it is. If you're legally authorized to vote in a district, you can run for any seat in that district. And that's the way our founding fathers set it up.
There's an age requirement too.
Oh,
on
yes, right.
some of those, but yeah,
Very few.
Yeah,
Very few. That's the way our founding fathers set it up, because they thought that the best judge of public policy was the public. Well, today we're kind of getting away from that. We're kind of getting into a elite expert class. And a lot of things, we're deferring to the opinions of these educated, might I say, idiots that just don't know where the rubber actually meets the road, but they think they can plan everything. They think they have all the answers. I've been ranching now. Of course, I'm just a new hand. It's only been about 18 years. But I've been in the district to understand a little bit about how the district is. So, yeah, I guess what the thing that most interests me is having a real person there. And my experience, my life experience, and my concern with how the country is going at the same time is, I think, what qualifies me. Was that your question?
more or less.
Okay, very good.
All right, gentlemen. Well, I just, again, want to thank you. This has been very pleasurable to sit across from you, to have this discussion. I'm sure it's beneficial to listeners. And, you know, in the interest of time, if you feel like those were good closing remarks, or I will make good on offering you each a minute or so for closing remarks. How do you feel like you need some closing remarks? Brian says he doesn't need, he figures that was good.
I think that was plenty good.
I think,
my own self, too.
All right.
So.
Plenty good, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Very good.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners. Remember, early voting is underway, and these are candidates seeking Elko County Commission in District 1. You've been listening to Jay Dalton and Brian Gale. Thank you for joining us for our radio show, Elko Live Today.